Welcome back to the Make Arma Not War 2025 podcast. In this episode, Senior Community Manager Niles George spent some time discussing the previous Make Arma Not War contest with two well-known and current members of Bohemia Interactive, Joris-Jan van Land and Karel Mořický. Both previous judges of the contest share some of their memories from that time and why some of those lessons can help you in our current contest.
Hello and welcome everyone. If you're tuning in, this is the next installment of the Make Arma Not War 2025 video series. Today we're going to be looking at the legacy of the Arma's Make Arma Not War contest, what it meant back then, the impact it had over the years, and why some of our lessons still matter today from that contest. But before we get into all of that, I'm very excited to welcome two very recognizable faces of the Armaverse. However, I think for those that don't know, I think it's best if you introduce you guys yourselves. Joris, we'll go ahead and start with you if you want to say hello. Say hello to everybody.
Yep. Hi, I'm Joris, and I am currently working from the Amsterdam office of Bohemia Interactive. I've been with the company for anywhere between 20 and 25 years now. I forgot to count. And I think my role during the original Make Arma Not War contest was the project lead for Arma 3. So that's, I guess, why I'm here as well. And somehow, ironically, I'm still working on Arma 3, 12 years after its release. We are now preparing another update for it. So that's me.
Yeah. And next.
Hi, I'm Karel. I'm also with the Amsterdam office, and I've been with Bohemia almost for 20 years. Before that, I started as a modder on Operational Flashpoint, now Arma Coldamore Result, as a designer, and then for most of those almost 20 years here, I've been designer on Arma.
Awesome. As Joris kind of hinted at already, yeah, you guys are definitely you're both former members or active developers at the time during the previous Make Arma Not War, as well as judges for both of that. For a moment, I just want to take us back to that time. Obviously, it's almost been a decade exactly or more since the beginning of that process. So this might be a bit of a flashback for you. But can you just, for a moment, just what exactly do you remember most about back that time?
I will begin, I guess. So that was 2 years after the official release, I think, of Arma 3, the 1.0. We had early access before that. And so as a team, we were still, of course, very actively developing the platform, but we were also, I guess, getting into our official DLC. Not quite sure anymore which DLC was the active one back then. So it was still a very busy time as well. And at the same time, there was this Make Arma Not War project starting up via our publishing department and a lot of other people involved, of course. I remember back then my brother Cornel was the brand and PR manager, so he was heavily involved as well with it. And yeah, it was just really cool to be able to even start such an initiative, because maybe modding now is starting to finally become a little bit more mainstream for other games, but back then it was still quite rare, at least in official support. And this was a very, I would almost say, trend-setting project with such large prize money as well. And so I think it was really cool to be able to do it.
As for me, I mainly remember that I had no idea what I was signing into when I wanted to be judge, because I was quite shocked by the amount of entries which assigned for the competition, and then just how can I realistically judge it all? Like, of course, there was if I remember, there was some public voting, or each contestant had some supporters, so you could see which are already popular among players and focus on those. But still, I remember I essentially for 2 or 3 weeks, I did not do I think I was doing either Zeus or Eden editor back then, but for 2 or 3 weeks, I just put it on the side and just played missions, check the total conversion, check all as many as add-ons as possible, what also surprised me, how many of them came with very little instruction. So there's some interesting looking tool or a feature there. It's like, and there's no explanation. How do I even start evaluating? And a lot of them I had to really pass because I did not even know how to use it. But just the scale of it was really shocking. And at the same time, it was of course nice to see how popular the game is, because of course still coming from Arma 2 mindset, even pre-DayZ, it was like, we are still a niche game, not many people play this game, and then seeing, oh wait, people actually like it, and a mass, not just niche. So that was very pleasant, very motivational, boosting.
And I guess that actually, sorry, like you are leading us now into our first tip, maybe even for the current Make Arma Not War, because as you're saying, like make sure that your entry is either guiding itself very well by just playing it, or it has enough support materials that you know how to use it or what to deal with it, because otherwise.
At least we moved since Flashpoint times that at most of mods are either installed by all by Steam Workshop. I remember in Flashpoint there was even older competition, 2004 mission design competition. There, of course, you had to do everything manually back then. So at least it still installed itself. But in the game, especially for add-ons, missions are easy. You go to mission list, you play, and it somehow introduces yourself. But add-ons and the total modification, like where do I start? Where do I find it at the editor? How do I set it up? Because a lot of the add-ons did not come with example missions. Those which did, that was the best, because I could just start showcase, start looking at what Iron Soldiers and tanks are there. But if there was no showcase mission, where do I even find it in the editor?
Yeah, I mean it's important to know that this not only is the next iteration of Make Arma Not War, but there has been previous contests similar to the 2014 version, or the previous Make Arma Not War, the original one here, that were definitely related to contests of making mods. But I think back to Joris's point about the idea that it wasn't always like mainstream to have modding. Can you touch on that? Like what exactly was, not only from the community standpoint for Arma, but on the industry whole, like do you, like when you say that there wasn't, it was kind of a niche or kind of a less known thing, do you think that the competition helps to kind of elevate that, or like shape that idea that modding was more better for games? Or
Big question. I would say, of course, whenever or since ever there have been games made on PCs or similar platforms, there has been modding. Like even without official support. I remember back in the day, I was doing Duke Nukem 3D levels. I was doing Command and Conquer rules.ini, like tweaks and stuff like that. So this is not in sense new, but oftentimes it was definitely not supported. There was definitely not, there was few games with official SDK and mod tools. And even the first Arma, or back then Operation Flashpoint, I wouldn't say it was necessarily officially supported to a very high standard. Like it was just the architecture of the technology, the Real Virtuality Engine, and the tools were definitely very modding friendly in a way already back then. But over the years, we have tried to become better and better at officially supporting it by either releasing tools quicker or having more documentation. Or
But with this, for that time, I think it was good. Like, of course, since then with Steam Workshop and even tools you can get through Steam, so the access to it is much easier. But for the time when you had in-game editor and you had in-house tools like the Oxygen, the object builder, I think I would not say that it was somehow bad. At least back then, what I remember.
oh no, sorry, my point was Arma 1.
Yeah, I mean, literal Operation Flashpoint. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But of course, since then, like recently, I wanted to check something in Operation Flashpoint, one of my older mods, and oh my god, I struggle just trying to set it up. And of course, Reforger now with in-game workshop, where I don't need to even leave the game to install mod, activate it, or toggle various mods. That even going to Arma 3 now feels a bit like reading a storybook.
Karel, do you ever go back just to play some of the old games that far, or do you I know you sometimes will reflect on talking about what it was like back in terms of the modding and stuff like that, but is there any time that you kind of just quickly or nostalgic enough to hop back to look at some of those things?
This I did mainly because I wanted to tweet about something, but also I realized that this year marks 20 years since I released my probably biggest mission or mod on Operation Flashpoint, so I'm tempted to replay it and probably cringe about how dated it's gonna be.
What was the reaction of just how the sheer commitment to the idea of modding as an acceptable practice?
Oh wow! Like obviously no one expected the kind of massive escalation of some of these projects into the gaming sphere. Like we have seen, of course, something similar with Daisy and Dean Hall, who was working back then on a multiplayer mode for Arma 3, and it went on. Well, we know the story, but it's almost overwhelming. Like the sheer content was overwhelming, as Karel already pointed out. It gives you kind of refreshed respect for also our quality assurance testers, because sometimes even just playing the vanilla game, like all the campaigns, all the missions, is kind of impossible.
And this was even worse because it was not just about playing. The organizers of Make Arma, they had to make sure that the entries adhere to rules, and some of the rules were you cannot take content from some other games. Basically, all the content you have there has to be legal, no stolen music or meshes. So they had to unpack add-ons and the mods and see, evaluate. That I that was really hell of a job, and I think that was also not foreseen. And there have been it also brought some dramas where, of course, either accusation of stolen content, or at the same time there was one mod which accidentally actually included something which did not adhere to rules. And there was what I really like. It was an add-on category. I will not name it. Which one was it? But I really like it. I will vote for it. But when we contacted them about it, they admitted it, and they said basically, okay, we are withdrawing our entry. They took it very very gentlemanly.
So
It
that
was
brings
not
us
only
to
that, it was also
tip of the day number two. Tip of the day two
Sorry?
is please, please, please be very aware of the contest rules, of the licenses of the Arma Reforger and the Enfusion tools, and definitely of other IPs that or licensed content. Like be very careful. Be sure that you know what you are using, you can use, or even better, just use your own original work. And
Let's suggest that
like
I'm still remember 2004 competition, which was only about missions, and there was one of my favorite Operation Flashpoint missions, a Hawk in the Nets, which is very much inspired by Metal Gear Solid. They first released it with some music taken from games like Ghost Recon or Rainbow Six, because back then it was only one of the few music which you could download on the early internet as MP3s. But when they signed it for competition, they actually coordinated with some music artists, and they re-recorded all the music. So it's all basically they had their back covered. It was all theirs. I did not like the new music. When I'm replaying that mission, I'm replaying with the origin.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the idea of like influence, also like the idea that modding can also not only just like as a whole from for the community's interest, but also for you guys as developers, as you're going into the process about like what things that interest people, and what kind of things features and mechanics were creative and interesting. How much is played into the official development of a game because of what you saw.
Can't remember any specific features. What you mentioned also, that it eventually also not a direct led, but it was one of the influences on the CDLC, the creative DLC program, which not sure if it would happen if the competition was not there. Maybe it would look different, but it was just yet another step in the commitment to modding.
yeah, and I'm also not too aware of us basically being directly inspired by a mod and then implementing something in vanilla, but it would be also naive to think that this bi-directional, let's say, inspiration doesn't happen. Like, of course, when we see good ideas or good mechanics, then it might down the road influence one of our designers who will like riff on that and iterate it. But I think more importantly almost is that it showed us in a lot of cases that, for example, the architecture we needed to still make more mod friendly. So with Reforger and Enfusion, I remember all the way like the last couple of years, it was often very like passionate discussions about how moddable should this be, or how can we expose this parameter to the public or not, or how dangerous, what are the risks, and so in that sense, I think the influence was stronger.
And there it's actually a double-edged sword, because you can take it too far, as I did many times, where you keep thinking about modding to the point where you try to make everything somehow clean code and organized, and it goes almost bloated the way how the code structured, rather than being simple, one feature doing exactly what it should do. Because yeah, my experience with modders often, rather than taking some big system, a big feature we designed, and it's technically is moddable by some rules. They rather rewrite it in their own way. So on surface, it does the same thing, but it's a lot of smaller things. So even modability has to be taken with with moderation. Yeah.
I think one practical
But anybody who
example-
tried to mod Game Master and run a Reforger will probably attest to that.
Yeah, and one practical example, I think, which sometimes a game can a little bit suffer from having mod support, is in user interfaces, in menus, you cannot get away with having a list of only a fixed number of items. Let's say a list of 10 tanks, because potentially there is an infinite number of tanks getting added via mods. So you need to have
Or 0, it could be empty.
or 0. So you could have massive lists. You need filtering systems, and this can make the user interface and the UX quite unwieldy. So this is kind of a downside sometimes.
On the idea of, continuing the idea of like modding and things like that, has there always like, even talking about the original competition, was there any like surprises that you saw?
My kind of favorite category of mods, I guess, are the really crazy ones, like over the top and just completely breaking the engine in a way, or that is just really fun. And my go-to example is always Super Miller Land, where basically, let's say, one of the classic games was re-envisioned with the character we all love to hate, Miller. And yeah, just all the work, like knowing what you would have to do to basically bend RV engine into that with all the animation work is just mind-blowing. And it was even fun to play. So I absolutely loved that and those kind of mods.
Yeah, I really enjoyed when I don't remember what was the mod name, but it took Arma to space. You could fly a jet higher, and at some point it just rendered Earth below you and planets or stars. So that was I still don't know how they did it. There was a lot of fakery involved for sure.
But like thinking about also the new competition, so coming into Armor Forger with Enfusion as being kind of a next major hurdle for those that are coming into the new competition. What things do you think about, or like it would be a kind of a hurdle or tactical step that they might have to think about for something like that?
I think the big change is the whole tool set, because Arma 3 is still a bit Wild West in a way. You have a lot of separate tools which are not necessarily talking to each other. A lot of it you have to edit in some text editors like user interface. Meanwhile, Enfusion is really professional modding, like game engine. It's a game engine tools. Disadvantage, of course, it is when you just open Enfusion Workbench, you're like, where should I even start? Because it really looks like, like I can do Unreal or Unity. But once you take the first steps, you realize you're more powerful, I think, than you were in Arma 3. And mainly, the process is much smoother. You don't need to be juggling all the various, almost competing aspects where one thing that works in one tool, but it's causing problem with another tool. So the maturity of the engine helps, but the first steps are probably maybe a bit more difficult also. Like you're saying it's new, but Arma Reforger was released about 3 years ago. So I think there's been by now, first there's a lot of quite extensive documentation on Community Wiki, which Lou Montana is managing, one of our technical designers. And of course, for past several months, there's been those videos introducing and even modding. So I think that was the best first step to the engine.
Yeah, I guess I should say when I say new is like newest in the series for sure. But yeah, like I guess the
Newer.
is newer. But
I think if the competition was, if he started the competition right after Reforger was released, I think that would be very unfair to community, because they would have to also struggle with learning it. But by now, there are quite a few modders who already know a lot about the engine. When I look by add-on by Bacon, that's like, how is this even possible? So there are already people who are pushing boundaries beyond what we thought is possible.
yeah, for sure.
Oh, of course, we had a similar learning curve ourselves, because especially in Amsterdam team, we were kind of still one of the last teams to really switch from RV to Enfusion. Not all of us, like Karel worked on Game Master, for example, but especially for myself. And
That's why when we go there, by the way, is so was.
And Well, one of the things that we did is we set up several game jams for the Amsterdam team, and just internal only, and basically do some little mini games or even just game modes, I think, originally, just to learn the tool set and the different editors. And one of them, of course, later was used as a kind of sample game even. It's called Hexcavate, and it again shows how crazy you can go with Enfusion, like far more than Arma 3 even. Like you can make a whole different type of little game
That
for the
one
wildcard
final record
tutorial.
workshop.
Exactly. And but even for myself, I was doing some little, let's say, learning side project. I think because for Arma 3, I was making, and I'm sorry for that, but I made the time trials and the firing drill. So the first thing I wanted to do in Reforger was kind of make these little time trial races as well. And just by doing that, like not going too wildly ambitious yet, it really helps you to kind of get an idea of how the engine architecture works, what editors to use. And I would suggest people to do that as well. Like start small and basically maybe first just start with, I want to make this car pink now, and just how does that work? And then move on to some
Nice idea. However, art could also be if you're a seasoned Arma 3 modder, and especially I take it, of course, I will see everything through mission design lens, but you can try to remake some of your missions for Arma 3. Just last week, I played Rookie by Sarge, which is
Okay.
actually a designer on Arma project. And he remade his Arma 3, some small, short, atmospheric, almost a horror mission for Arma 3, and he remade it for Reforger. So that's nice in the way that you already know how the story goes, how you would structure it, and so you don't need to figure it out. Rather, you need to figure out how to, for example, make make the stuff in Enfusion. Of course, by then he already knew Enfusion, but still taking something you know on art level and porting it, and so you don't need to only struggle with technical level.
And do I remember it well? Sarge was, I think, also a winner in the original contest with Deliverance, right?
That's true. Him and CJ, they created Deliverance, which was, yeah, I think it was the gold winner in the single player category.
No, I think that was Resist. I think, but they were in the top 3.
So they were silver, probably bronze. Yeah,
And later on, they went on to become Bohemia devs, and they worked, for example, on Old Man and now on Reforger. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, and so did the developer of Resist, who the Kinema,
Yeah,
who
Scott.
also did that.
Exactly.
Yeah, Scott, and then he was the writer for Arma 3 Laws of War, and he devised the whole story of Contact.
Yeah. I mean, there's several developers from the original Make Arma Not War that went on eventually to join the company and have made lasting impacts on not only Arma 3 but also now Arma Reforger. But is there any advice that you might suggest to someone who is just getting started?
I think here I will quote Montcalp, which is one of the developers behind the global mobilization of CDLC for Arma 3, where his advice is, every time you're getting you to just click on every button, try every function there is, because if you don't do it, you may be missing some function which can automate your process, which you will normally spend hours doing manually.
Yeah.
And maybe from me, some cliches, I guess, like play to your strengths. Like I could imagine, for example, someone being super talented in particle effects or effects, basically. And the Enfusion engine and the toolkit is definitely far superior in terms of particle effects than Arma 3 was. So you can do crazy stuff, and we've already seen that in the mods that are available. So I could imagine just focus on some small little mod that does cool effects, for example. I don't know now exactly an example, but that could be a way. And I would say be ambitious, but be reasonable with scoping. So especially now I guess the deadline is a couple of months away, I wouldn't maybe start building like the entire orbit of some big NATO military or something, but pick, for example, a cool champion asset, like one cool, unique new weapon or vehicle, whatever. Make it really nicely polished and finished, but with some maybe unique gameplay. And then ideally even have like at least one showcase scenario that people can play with it. That is how I would personally like go, like rather than massive and have huge quantity.
Is there anything like on the side of modding or like the technical structure when you're wondering that you think that a lot of people overlook?
Don't bother how it works, just as long as it works. Even if it's mess of a code, hack upon hack, if it works, that's what matters to the user. Like I myself sometimes tend to get a bit sidetracked by, oh, it needs to be clean and whatever, and it's be like really well structured. Honestly, people who play, they will not care. Like as long as it's fun, as long as it's in case of mission or for I don't know if it somehow works, even if it's supported, but it's basically a house of cards which barely holds together. Well, as long as it holds together, who cares?
It's a good point that it kind of is where it diverges the modding contest from something that you would release as a game professionally, let's say. Like you can get away with some of the rougher edges in this case behind the scenes more. So good point that you can maybe take some shortcuts as long as they don't all collapse when we start playing them, right?
Yeah.
And I guess
Especially when
I
you
have
have multiple together, then everything collapses.
exactly. My tip is perhaps more in the organizational sphere. It might be a bit boring for some people, but I think it's something that there was some issues with in the previous contest. That's why I want to bring it up. So anything where there is money involved, ultimately, like prize money, you should, in my opinion, it would be wise, especially when you're working with a team, to make some agreements beforehand of how you're going to distribute such money if you might win. Because in some cases, it got a little bit messier or like, yeah, less pleasant, let's say, when big amounts of money arrived and they had to deal with it and they hadn't any agreements beforehand. And who knows, like some person might have contributed less time or whatever. Like it's ultimately not up to us as Bohemia at all. This is something you have to deal with as a team, but I would suggest to kind of assume that you're going to win and try to think about it beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly probably some people that enter thinking, "Oh no, this will never win," or it's like a small gaff of a entry or something like that. But we definitely, as long if you enter it in fairly, it's going to be fully evaluated.
Catering to specific judges will lead you nowhere. I remember in previous competition there was some mission. We get little picture frames with pictures of various judges, and at some point I saw myself there. It's like, this.
Yeah, so trying to sweet talk the judges or jurors will not do anything. I can promise you that for sure.
Plus, I think also don't forget about the special category or award. I guess it's
Yeah.
the Don't Fight Alone initiative. Because we had something similar, healthcare in danger, in the previous Make Arma Not War via the ICRC. And there was entries, there was a winner, but I don't think it was like one of the more popular.
There was some lot of entries, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to stand out and you want to have basically kind of more unique path, then this could be the way for you. Plus, it's a very interesting and relevant topic.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, yeah. So, the Don't Fight Alone award is definitely tied to, we're working with our partner of Stack Up, who works with veterans and members of the, people of the community that deal with mental health, so those that are struggling either with the trauma, physically or mentally. But the idea for this contest is that award or mod that can kind of promote a positive environment, in gaming or amongst your community and the general community at large is something that I think a lot of people, like you're saying, have a small mod where that is just fun to enjoy. I mean, this isn't a great idea, but is something as simple as having a scenario that you can kind of like nature walk through Everon or something. Could be as simple as creating a relaxing, positive environment in the game. That I think is one of those ideas that
It's a broad
that could be-
category, very much like free to interpret in different ways. So
Yeah.
I really don't need to be focused on like, oh, it needs to be super serious
Yeah.
PTSD. I don't know. Like
No.
there's some artistic freedom though.
Yeah, I think heading on again on that is just, it doesn't have to be the largest, like crazy, doesn't have to be a total conversion mod or something like that. That really, I think there are other opportunities in this competition to definitely, provide you avenues of maybe even winning or just having some recognition in the larger community. But yeah,
Just make this experience in Reforger something more casual and zen to enjoy, let's say.
Yeah, have a little nice little relaxing time. But I think we kind of also mentioned it earlier, and I didn't bring it up, but the idea that there are lots of opportunities for people to in terms of the learning side of things. There are going back to how we explore getting into this competition, there is the wiki, where obviously, we put out new information. There is the modding boot camps that it was already mentioned about, providing a series of videos and articles to help those in certain categories. So if you focus on, maybe I want to do something with audio, or maybe something with visual effects, or if I want to just introduce that that vehicle into the game, there are definitely ways.
Plus with learning, for us, not everybody learns that way, but for me, the best learning is just to reverse engineer. When you open Workbench, all game data are there, apart from, of course, the programming code, but all game data are there at your disposal. You can check all the scripts, all configs. It's all there for you to. For me, the best way to start is always just copy something which works, tweak values, move sliders, change positive values to negative values, and see how does it affect the result. Because it's easier than creating something new, just to modify something which is proven to work. It should be clear what your mod is about. Like, you look at it, and because there are some. To this day, I don't exactly know what Alive mod, for example, do, because it's just it's great popular, but when I look at it at a first glance, it's like it's a bit non-transparent for me. I think that of course it's the competition that they improved massively, but generally, it's always good that at the first glance you understand this is a mod about A, B, and C, and after you install it, as we discussed, like, this is how you can try it.
Yeah, and maybe in extending on that is generally like presentation. I know that some of the winners, they were also kind of looking very polished because they used some of the same presentation, let's say, tools that Karel, for example, used in the official campaigns. So that made them feel very complementary by design to the official missions. I'm not saying our official content is always the best, but it made it very neatly fit in, and it was using all of the available ways that you can kind of make the title cards or the intro text or the briefings of a scenario a bit more readable and nicely looking. And so I think
Yeah, the best example, when there were some missions which try to create their own task system. So when I started playing, the tasks were not where I wanted to be. There was some different dialogue accessible through action menu, and it just added a layer of complexity which is not necessary. Like, if something is in the game, use it and focus on something you can add rather than reinventing the wheel. And also, and to be clear, make sure as we mentioned earlier, there's just so many entries. At least in previous competition, there were so many, and when I'm seeing the entries in this competition, it's already growing. Just the promo picture is something which you should pay a really big attention to, name and the picture, because when the judges are browsing the entries, it's the promo picture you will see. But we have the same, like, when we are publishing the game on Steam, really, what will be the logo? What will be the pictures? What will be the trailer? Really, you want to have a hook. You want to capture the attention of the user and you have few seconds for that. Because when there's something off with it, when they don't like it, they will move on. They will start browsing further. So you really need to attract people within few seconds. So good profile picture, good name, clarity, what is it about, focus on that, because you may have the most polished, amazing mod on which you put hundreds of hours and which is the gameplay competing with professional games, but if nobody will come to play it, then what's the point?
First impressions do matter, and but I think also on the other side of that, like, having a really nice presentation but no quality of a mod necessarily is also the detriment. It's like, obviously, we're when we go through, not me personally, but when the jurors are go through and look through dozens upon dozens, it's going to be your impression, your experience of that mod as a whole as well. So I think I think when you're saying, make sure your marketing or your promotion of it is good, that is also part of that experience overall, as your entry.
So in a similar way, and again, it gets little bit generic, but I do like it also when the content of that mod is then of a consistent quality. So let's say I have two weapons, and one is like the most hyper polished, super detailed thing, and then the next one is maybe like not so great. That is kind of off-putting, I would say. So then I would almost rather have just the one nicely polished one. or to have them both at a slightly lesser quality, but at least consistent.
It's better to have everything kind of average, but the same level of average, than have this contrast between super high polars and then something which muddy textures.
I mean, you kind of hinted at, Karel, that the idea of like feature creep, like the idea of like, you can do too much also with some things. Do you have any thoughts on like, when is the time to stop?
I don't know. After 20 years, I'm still trying to figure out when is the time to stop.
And as a project lead or manager, I would say look very carefully at the schedule. You know already when you need to finish this thing and submit it. There will not be any exceptions for being late. And also do not target that final date, but allow yourself, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks even of little polishing and testing and iterating. And try to not submit on the last minute, but maybe the day before or something like that. So take all these factors into your own little planning timeline. And what is the usual thing people say is like, take your estimates and then triple them or something. And you're not even then you're probably still not close. So yeah.
I mean, so the idea is you do mention that like some people have already submitted their entries now, but you can submit or you keep updating until the date of the deadline. Like the idea that of quality checking, or maybe new updates or new introduced ideas come into it. The idea of improving that throughout the entire to make the best quality mod you can. For sure, it can probably make some difference.
Plus, you even avoid the risk then of not having anything at the end. Like if you already have some earlier iteration up and you keep iterating, then you have at least something there.
For sure. Is there, I feel like I have to ask this because you guys, again, reminder that these are not jurors. They do not influence the decision-making of anything, but I'm very curious to ask, are there any mods that you personally either would be interested in seeing for this new Make Arma Not War contest, as part of the competition? Like, is there anything that comes to mind that would be really interesting to, see in Enfusion or as a part of Armor Forger?
If somebody signs up with RAH-66 Comanche helicopter, then I think I will board with Mark or Ivan and try to nudge them to like please vote for this because I love Comanche.
And I like helicopters, racing modes, and dinosaurs. So take your pick.
Dinosaurs. Okay. Actually, it's funny you say that, but I actually did see. Yeah, I did see a video recently of someone who has managed to already implement in Enfusion T-Rex riding as an option. So, yeah, definitely. Now that we say that, there's just going to be an influx now of T-Rexes rally racing and
Jurassic Park mod with when you're racing and then evacuate using Comanche helicopters.
I don't hear any problems. It sounds great.
Yeah, but as for me, generally, any single player mission I will very much appreciate. Even though I'm not a judge, I like to play Reforger for one time, and because let's face it, Reforger has intense focus on multiplayer with its conflict mode. Finally, there is official multiplayer mode, which is actually sizable. But apart from combat op, single player has been neglected. So any single player mission which I can play, I will gladly welcome.
It's actually an interesting reflection also on the past. Like I would say the Arma games up until Arma 3, we've always kind of struggled to present a very strong official multiplayer mode like the central one. And almost with Reforger, it is flipped around. Like conflict clearly became the dominant one. With Arma 3, I would say maybe the one that came closest is Warlords by Jose.
Yep.
But before then, it was really the community carrying with King of the Hill and Battle Royale and, of course, all the other variants of multiplayer. So that's an interesting
Even
thing.
today, we still see.
In fact, Warlords is created by the same guy who then led to the development of Conflict.
Yes.
Yeah,
But, of course, multiplayer is...
And one other thing, he's actually one of the 10 winners of the 2004 competition with his Mountain Dew mission.
The only other thing I was going to say, with multiplayer, you have, of course, some extra challenges and risks, because a single player mission, you can play it as a developer, as a single person. With a lot of multiplayer, you need a player population. So somehow you have to build a community, and it makes it hard, but it makes it also very rewarding.
Even on technical side, just replication still haunts me.
Yeah.
Scripting, multiple scripting.
I mean, that is one thing we haven't really touched on, that the idea of like, for this contest is that there is, a lot of people think of like assets, terrains, like, textures or, really cool gear, but the experience, we kind of touched on a bit, but the experience of like just having a nice mission or like scenario or a nice, like, kind of walkthrough experience is another possibility for people to
And again, it doesn't need to be some 1 hour long saga. If you create some 20 minutes intense single player scenario, as I will go back to Play Rookie by Sarge and Virtual Realist. I think its total playtime is like 15 minutes, but it's 15 minutes of very atmospheric content, and that can have the same lasting or even better lasting impact than trying to spend 2 hours in a mission, and it will be also very pleasant to judges' time.
And the tools
But
are so
consider that,
fast.
like, specifically for a mission, consider that judges should be able to finish it, because if they play for 1, 2, 3 hours and then they can start feeling, oh, I need to start moving on to other entries, and they will leave it unfinished. And so the lasting impression could be, I liked it, maybe, but maybe there was something more. The feeling could be that there's some missed content and that they could have commented more, versus you have half an hour, 40 minutes intense scenario, they finish it, and it's like, oh my God, it was, there's a sense of closure. They moved on, not because the time pressuring them, but because the credits were rolling, and it felt like this was some coherent experience.
Yeah, and the tools are so vastly better for setting an atmosphere, I would say now. Like lighting is better,
Cinematic
all the
tools.
particle effects, sounds tools are
Camera
in
tools are
manualized
amazing.
better. The camera tools, which our in-house video team and led by Vladimir Jaskia, he does the Reforger traders, for example. Like a lot of the cinematic tools coming into Reforger are being improved is because they are needed by the people making these traders. But community can use those. You can create effectively, I would almost say, AAA quality cutscenes if you really wanted to. Like, so
That could
yeah,
be that
go for it.
the last category, the
Wildcard.
yeah, the wildcard. That
Wildcard,
would
yeah.
be like, what's stopping? I'm now not well versed with the exact rules, but what's stopping it from being a cutscene?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely, the assets are, the like things like terrains and things like that I already mentioned, but yeah, wildcard is a category that we have like often I think is forgotten. Like the things that provide, original ideas or something that's a little off the cuff in terms of what you might think is, so a cutscene, a really interesting scenario, like cinema based, experience could be it fit into
And
that.
even single player mission, you can have the playable segment, then you have a little cutscene with story catch up, and then another playable segment. Or if you are very much inspired by Hideo Kojima, then you have a long cutscene, little gameplay, long cutscene. Like,
Yeah.
up to you.
But well, I think we've had a lot of discussion about different ideas and things, but I just want to say thank you again for taking part of this. Is there any last things so that you can part yourself to share your knowledge or anything you want to express for the community to know as they enter into the next Make Arma Not War 25 contest?
Well, if the competition will be like any of the previous, I hope to see some of the winners in the future at Bohemia Interactive as a new members.
High threshold there, you just said.
Yeah, and I would just generally say, of course, a lot of good luck wished to everyone who is entering. Even though I'm not directly involved or any judge or in any capacity, I'm really looking forward to playing a lot of the entries. I already see some on the workshop now that I'm like, yes, I need to play that eventually. I'm going to wait for the final submission deadline just to get the best version. So yeah, I wish everyone really a lot of luck and a lot of fun. Don't forget to have fun doing this. And yeah, let's see who is gonna win this time and go on to big things.
Yeah, I think all the details we'll put in the description, things like that. MakeArmaNotWar.com. Deadline August 1st, so they have a few months to get all in and things like that. But yeah, same ideas. Thank you again for having a nice little conversation, but definitely interested in seeing what people come up with, what kind of creativity comes from all this. And yeah, it's going to be a good time for Armor Forger and for the future of the platform as a whole. So yeah, until next time, as always, as I like to say, see you in the battlefield.